planned so much to say. You prepared. You knew your content very well. Yet at some point, you saw the audience leave. Not all at once, but eventually. A phone here, someone yawning there. But I want to tell you, it's not about your ideas or your content. It was about the structure. That is what we are going to talk today. How to structure a speech, how to take them to a roller coaster. And I'm going to give you 6 steps to help you reach to that perfect speech structure that you've been dying for. Because most speeches die at the 3rd sentence. It goes, you don't have any clear structure, you don't have any hook, you don't have any closing punch. And so you lose them along the way. You have to remember that your speech is a journey. Take it as, what do they call these things? A drive-through, okay? So you are driving through somewhere with some people. Make sure that you carry them all along. Make sure that it's perfect from the start till the end. So here are the things we are going to cover. First, we'll talk about the opening. How should you start a speech to make sure that you grasp their attention and make them eager to listen to more? Then we'll talk about the introduction. That should be about the 10 to 15% of your speech. The introduction is there to help them know what they are going to learn in this presentation. And then we move to the body. The body is about 60 to 70% of your speech. So that's very important. Then the closing, about 10 to 15% of your speech. The closing should be memorable. That's the last thing that we'll hear from you. And I will also show you some other things to hook and hold their attention throughout the speech. And finally, I will give you something to tackle about the Q&A session if your speech has Q&A parts. So if you are ready, let's start with the first part, the opening. It is always stated that you should start with a bang because the opening is your first impression, and you might know that you don't have second chance to make a first impression. So the moment you step there, you talk, the way they perceive you is what will determine if they want to listen to you or if they don't. So you have to think of the opening as a trailer. When you're browsing through Netflix to see movies you can watch, you do watch the trailer. If it doesn't intrigue you, if it doesn't catch your attention, you don't watch it. You don't watch the entire movie. So just like you judge the movie based on a trailer, they will also judge you and your presentation based on the opening. So how do you open? The first thing is using what we call a shocking start. Shock them with a certain statistics. For instance, you can tell them 90% of startups fail because of infrastructure. Today, I will tell you about 3 things which will make you be in the 10% of those who don't fail. Or you can give them a bold statement. A bold statement is something to make them rethink what they have been programmed to know. For instance, everything you know about leadership is wrong, and I will prove that to you. So imagine you are talking to people who've been leaders all their lives. They want to know what you have that can change that. Or you can start with a personal story. For instance, 5 years ago, I was broke, sleeping on my friend's couch with nothing, not knowing where to start. And today, I run a multi-million-dollar company. And today, I'm going to show you how I turned things around. That's mostly how I see most people start speeches when they are giving this big presentation. And those are my 3 tips I'll give you today about how to open a speech. So you hear, I didn't tell you to open with a joke because I believe joking isn't for everybody. You might tell something no one loves and your confidence out of the window. So if you are not good at humor, maybe don't try it everywhere. Okay. Also, I'm not a fan of, hey, my name is, and this and that, unless you are in, for instance, the Asian community where they value your credentials a lot. So if you're there, talk about your credentials, but that is something of another day. Let's go through the second stage of this, which is the introduction. I want you to see the introduction is the menu in a restaurant. When they hand it over to you, you look at things, you determine if you will stay for the main course or not. So the opening is not the same as the introduction. The opening is to grab their attention. The introduction is to tell them about what you will be covering. And we can do this using what I will call the triple P. So it's PPP formula. And the first P stands for purpose. So purpose means, why are you here? For instance, today I am going to show you how to double your productivity in 30 days. That is your purpose. The second P is for promise. Promise should answer the question, what's in it for them? Okay, so you tell them, by the end, you will have 3 actionable strategies which you can implement immediately. And then we have the last P, which is for path. Path is how you will get there, to explain all that you've promised them. You can tell them, we will cover your time wasters, we'll talk about prioritization, and finally, automation. So that's promise. No, you start with the purpose. Why are you here? Then the promise, what's in it for them, and finally the path, how you will get there. Let's talk about the body. As I've said, the body is very important. You have to know that the body is why they showed up in the first place. When they hand, this presentation is going to be about dampening your productivity. That's why they are here. So make sure you don't lose them, because if so, then you will have wasted the time of all of you involved. So because this is the 60 to 70% and we don't want to lose them, I'm going to tell you about one powerful thing you should think about when explaining the body, and that is 3. Just remember 3, okay? Human beings love things in 3. So for the principle, the rule of 3, I will give you some 3 things you can use to make sure that your body lands perfectly. The first one is 3 problems and 3 solutions. So you can structure your speech and make sure that you will be tackling 3 problems and their solutions. So for instance, you can talk about problem number 1 is you are overwhelmed. Then give them a solution, which is you should prioritize. Problem number 2, you're distracted. Solution, focus. Problem number 3, you're burnt out. Solution, recharge. Okay, that was basically me giving the opposite of the former, but okay, you do get what I'm talking about. If you don't get what I'm talking about, this is the time to comment about what I'm saying. Then you can give them 3 stories. Stories, you don't have to scratch your hand thinking about stories. Mostly stories are things you have lived about in your personal life, or things that you've heard about, or things that you've interacted with. So I have 3 types of stories you can give. The first one is a personal story. So this is a story about you. For instance, in 2014, I remember sitting at my hand-cold floor 2 a.m. in the morning with a lot of scribbled notes on the floor, wondering if I was crazy to start this business idea. Yeah, that's your personal story. The second story is a client success story. So if you've had a certain client, you've helped them with something and they got nice results, you can share this story. So I had this client who was struggling with the issue of imposter syndrome, and what we did is we made sure that she felt confident instead of waiting to be confident. This is how we did it. So that is a client success story. And you can also give a famous story. So these are stories you've heard before. Stories maybe about Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, and how they are good people and all that. So that will be a famous story. And finally, you can give them 3 steps. So you can tell them, we are going to cover this topic in 3 simple steps. The first step, identify your goal. The second step, create a plan. And the third step, execute. Now, this is it about all that. Then elaborate more on your 3 steps. Make sure that you keep it simple, you keep it memorable, and of course, actionable. Something that they can remember and recall. That will be perfect. Okay. Something else important is to make sure that you have transitions. Transitions goes like this. Now that we've covered X, let us move on to Y, so that you can make sure that they are not, in their notes, they've written step 1, but you are explaining step 3. So to make sure you don't create that kind of confusion, make sure that you have transition. So now that we've covered the body, let us move on to the grand finale, the closing. So I said opening, you have to start with a bang. That's something that will be like a first impression. They will judge you based on the first thing you say. It will determine if they will stay or not. The closing, it will determine if they will remember you or not, if they will remember what you talked about or not. So you should leave them cheering for more after you finish talking. And you can end powerfully with, I will give you 3 things, because I love 3 things. So the first thing is a call to action, or as they call it, CTA. And that goes like this. So a call to action is something that you can tell them based on what you've covered to make them do something about something else. For instance, starting tomorrow, I want you to implement one of the strategies we talked about today. Who is in? Or starting tomorrow, I want you to keep a journal or diary writing 3 things you are grateful about. A nice CTA, something to move them into action. Number 2, you can end with an inspiring quote. You can tell them, as Maya Angelou said, people don't remember what you said, but they always remember how you made them feel. So let's get out there and make people feel empowered. Whoa. Okay? And number 3, you can end with a story or metaphor. A story you can circle back. You can tell them, remember when I told you I was sitting on the cold hand floor with scribbled notes everywhere and a cold coffee? This is person from that time, yours truly. You can end with a story or a metaphor, as I've talked about. Life is like a marathon. It doesn't matter how you start, but how strong you finish. And that's basically it. When I talked about high-stake presentation, so that's the previous video, I talked about follow-up after finishing the speech, because especially high-stake presentation, it doesn't end when you leave the stage, but after you've closed the deal. So follow-up is very simple, and I wasn't to talk about this, but it's good to mention. About follow-up, you can follow up with various methods. For instance, you can remind them about what you covered. You can start by, hey, thank you everybody for joining the presentation, we covered these things. 1, 2, 3. Hey, Joseph, I liked the question you asked about productivity. Here is a little bit more insight about that. And you can also answer any unanswered question that arose during your presentation. Okay. Now, that was by the way, so by it goes in the way. Let's talk about the 5th step about structuring a speech, which is the hold and the hook, how to hook and hold your audience. And I'm going to give you 3 things. I will always give you 3 things. Make sure that you keep them in their seat. You don't give them a chance to look at their phone or to yawn or to chat with a friend unless you tell them, look at your friend and say this. Okay? The first thing you can use is curiosity. It killed the cat, but you can use it here. So you can tell them, what if I told you there's a simple way to get back 20 hours from your week? And if you are talking to people who are really busy and don't like some hours back, they will listen to you. Number 2, you can use a surprise. You can tell them something surprising. Most people who are successful don't work harder. They work smarter. And it's good to use the poses, the power pose. Why? Because the moment you pause, you give the person some time to reflect on what you just said. Why didn't they pause? Then they remember why you paused. And now they'll be asking, what are they about to say? And when you say what you're about to say, they will listen attentively. Finally, the 3rd thing is about relatability. So make sure you tell them something they can relate to, and you also relate to yourself. So raise your hand if you've ever felt overwhelmed and worked out. They raise their hands and you tell them, yeah, me too. And now when you are in this together, when it is we, people like to listen more. Does that work well with you? If it doesn't, please tell me. And I will tell you something better next time. Let's talk about the last step in this short video. It's the bonus, the Q&A. Because sometimes, especially if it's a long speech, there will be some time for questions and answers. The first thing you should know is make sure you prepare for the common questions, the frequently asked question. You can answer those pretty easily. But when it comes to tough questions you didn't think would come in the presentation, this is the formula you can use to make sure that you handle those questions successfully. Use ABC formula. A is for acknowledge. Hey, that is a great question right there. Then B is for bridge. So bridge is to connect the question to what you've covered. Tell them, let me tell you how that connects to what we discussed earlier. And C is for conclude. You give them a clear and direct answer. You don't tremble. So you can tell them, so to answer your question, here is what I recommend, A, B, C. Or if it's a question you can't answer, you can tell them, I will get back to you. Of course, acknowledge and be bridge, conclude, and then tell them, to conclude, I will answer that question when I've gotten more details about it. Or you can, if someone is asking you maybe to drive you crazy or to make sure that you are angry and don't want to see them again, you can ask them to give you more details about the question they've asked, and you will find that they will answer the questions for themselves, because some people are there to annoy some other people, believe me. Now, as I said, your speech is like a road trip and you have friends. Make sure that as you drive and navigate through, you have everyone in the vehicle happy and you are also enjoying the journey. Don't leave them high and yet you are low, because energy is contagious. We've talked about the opening. This is your first impression. It's like a tattoo, hand to erase. Make sure that you start with a bang. We then talked about the introduction. Make sure that you've given them the 3 P's we talked about: purpose, promise, and path. Make sure that they understand what you are there for, what you are about to cover, and how you are going to cover it. Then the body. The body we said is very important because that's what they came for. So you can use 3 pointers to divide your speech into and then elaborate from there so that they can remember. Then we've talked about the closing. The closing, close in a way that they will remember. You can circle back to what you started with. You can use a story, a memorable quote, or a call to action. And of course, you can mix one or two. You can give them a story and then a call to action. Then we talked about how to hook and hold them. We talked about using curiosity, surprises, and stories are a good part of that too. And of course, relatability. And I've told you how a simple way to handle Q&A if it's applicable in your speech. So now that you know your speech is not a lecture, you've known how to structure your speech well, make sure that you go out there and produce the best speech yet. And always there's room for improvement. Make sure that the scenery you create are captivating. If you have any question, feel free to ask me and it will be answered. And that is all we have today. Please have a nice time. Bye.